Well, hello, and welcome to my statutory. It is another glorious day in Scotland, and if you saw my spring tour of the garden a couple of weeks ago, you'll recognise all of these self-sown forget-me-nots, which I now have so many of that they're coming into little pots all over the house. If you've not been here before, my name is Jane, and I run an online creative community called the Studio Club. And on Fridays, I come on here and I talk about creativity, and I talk about nature, and I also talk about living life in a bit of a different way. I have an autoimmune disease, which gives me chronic fatigue and other things. So I'm sort of talking through the lens of really getting the most out of your life, just squeezing all of that joy out of your life without crashing yourself. And one of the ways that I do this is that for the past 3 years, I have been living my life as a series of experiments on a theme. And this year, the theme is trying to simplify my life and get rid of a lot of the clutter and noise in my head. So when I was in Italy earlier this year, I spent a month in Italy. You can see lots of videos about that down here. And I had 2 experiments running during that time, which I talked about back in March. And I said that I would come back here 6 weeks on and explain how I got on, because sometimes the experiments work brilliantly and I incorporate them into my life, and other times they don't and I just kind of like put them off to the side. So that was 8 weeks ago. I don't know where this year is going, because suddenly I was at 8 weeks and I thought, I had better go and do a report on my experiments. So 2 experiments that I was running. The first was all about cutting down my social media use on my phone. And I'll talk about that second, because I've already done a whole video on why I've now left Instagram, and that's down there. But I have got some other things to say, so I'll say them towards the end of this video. And the second thing was really addressing my activity levels. Now, the reason for both of these experiments was that one of the things that was concerning me was really, my memory was getting worse. I seemed to be lacking focus. I'd find it difficult to concentrate on doing one thing at a time, like reading a book or anything really, just any task. I would find myself starting it and then going off and doing other things and leaving everything sort of like half done. And I never got the satisfaction of having completed things. I was beginning to worry that my memory was actually going. I was worrying about early dementia. I think this is, maybe a common thing. I was thinking, is it a perimenopause brain fog? Is it to do with my autoimmune disease? Is it, should I be getting myself tested for ADD? What could it be? And then I listened to a podcast with a brain specialist called Wendy Suzuki, and she talked about how, one, a lot of this memory stuff is just that we're putting too much in there, too many bitty bits. And that's one of the reasons that I did the social media thing. But she said the other reason is that we have a processing part of our brain. And unless that is kept toned up, and she describes it as fat and fluffy, which I think, I'm quite a fat and fluffy person. If it's not sort of at its peak, it is a bit like having far too many tabs open on your computer. It slows down the processing. So it stops processing things effectively. But the way that she said, the best way to make sure it gets into that fluffy, fat, well-primed position is to do exercise. And to do exercise that is like a brisk walk for 45 minutes a day. That seemed quite doable. And that is enough. From like a start, that would be your first step to get your brain back into shape. Because one thing that was very encouraging to me that she said was that if you are a beginner, doing even a little bit is going to make a massive improvement, and that it gets actually in some ways harder to make improvements as you get fitter and fitter, but that if you are an unfit person, you'll get results really, really quickly. So I thought about this a lot in Italy. I have a very bad relationship with activity, and particularly with classes, things. I was very bad at sports at school. I mean, I was 18 months younger than anybody else in the class, but I think I would have still been very bad at sports at school. I was kind of like, people would rather play a man short or a woman short than have me on the pitch in hockey, kind of bad at sport. And I was really bad at things like gymnastics. I have very little coordination. I'm not very flexible naturally. All I remember about school sports, whether that was gymnastics or hockey or lacrosse or running or any of these things, I just remember the intense embarrassment and uncomfortableness. And then in adult life, I have sporadically had periods where I have gone to exercise classes and things, but I've never, ever enjoyed them. I can feel my shoulders going up even at the thought of them. And since I have had an autoimmune disease, I've also found that doing that much exercise, an hour's class, will mean that I can't do anything else that day, and probably goes on to the next day as well. It's not the way that I can personally take exercise. So I'm saying all of this to give you an idea of where I was starting from, and also all of my prejudices against organised exercise. So I was walking around Naples, because I do walk, not very fast, but I do walk, thinking about how I can do this. Now, then I noticed on my wrist I had an Apple Watch. Now, what I'm going to say here is not just for owners of Apple Watches, because I'm absolutely sure that everything can be done on any kind of, there are probably lots and lots of different ways you could do this. But I'm going to tell you the story of my Apple Watch. Now, I got an Apple Watch 2 years ago for Christmas. I had asked for it because I had convinced myself that I needed it for filming these videos. Because you can see, you can like mirror it onto your watch, you can see what's recording. You can make sure that you're actually in the frame. Because I'd done a lot of videos where I was actually, I was like way up here or way down here, and I wasn't in the frame. So I had decided that that was absolutely essential piece of filming equipment, and I needed an Apple Watch, and please could everybody get together and get me an Apple Watch for Christmas. So I got the Apple Watch for Christmas, and then I discovered that it was way too small. I couldn't actually see it, I was having to do this, things, and it was also really glitchy, and there was a time delay. So it was completely useless for the filming. I didn't really wear it after that, apart from when I was in Italy, because I could put my maps, like if I didn't know where I was going, I could just put the maps onto my watch, keep my phone in my inside pocket, and it would just tell me turn right here, turn left here, go to traffic lights and that kind of thing. So I found it incredibly useful for getting around Naples without looking like a tourist. I'd been in London a few months earlier, and I'd seen people mugged for their phones while they were checking directions. And I thought, oh, I don't want that at all. So my phone stayed inside my coat and I just used my watch. So when I was looking at how do I actually bring exercise into my daily life in a really simple way, I was wearing my watch. And on my watch, it has these activity rings, which are an Apple thing. And I've never used them, didn't even know really what they were for. So I thought, I wonder whether I can just use those to track my activity. And I wonder whether I can just simplify my whole activity down to just having those rings go fully round every single day. Now, the rings on the Apple Watch, probably Apple phone as well, are a blue one in the middle, which is you've got to have stood and moved around a bit in an hour. The green one, which is a brisk walk. And then the red one, which is, I think it's called Move, but it's calories. I'm sure it is not an accurate calorie counter, but calories used in doing things. So that can be anything. It can be gardening. It can be making beds. It can be lifting dye pots. It could be lots and lots of things. And this, it could be going to an exercise class, obviously. It can definitely be dancing. So I thought, actually, exactly the same way as other experiments, that it has only been when I can choose how it works. So like the Screen Zen thing in helping me stop my use of social media, and I got to choose all of the parameters with that. With the activity rings, I could also choose my goals and choose every day how I fulfill them. So with each of these rings, you set it, okay? So you decide what is your green brisk walk exercise target. What is your calories per day? It's sort of like, what is your movement target? And then the blue one, how many hours during the day do you want to have stood up and moved around? And I set them and started off. And it was really, really interesting, because I can do kind of experiments that if I'm a little bit low on the one that's moving around, do I, while I'm making lunch, put on some music and dance? And then it might just move slightly further around. Do I go for a walk after lunch? Do I just do some vigorous weeding? Whatever, and can I fit it right the way through my day? Because for me, having a big block of exercise which tires me out, that tired out feeling can last, the rest of the day. So if I went and did an exercise class in the morning, a lot of people find absolutely brilliant. It's maybe 4 o'clock by the time I've recovered from that. So that is clearly not going to fit into my life. It's not going to help my life. But with this system, what I can do is I can, do a bit of dancing in the morning for 10 minutes. And then I can go for a walk after coffee. I could do some weeding, and it all just adds up. And if it's not adding up, I can see. I can go, oh, Jane, you're just kidding yourself. You haven't actually moved at all today. I think you better do some this afternoon. So for me, this has been brilliant. It has been sort of like transformative because I'm an intelligent person. I'm not a lazy person. I like data and I like being able to change it. Second thing that I love about these activity rings are that I can override them. Now, I say this with caveats. I think that lots of people who have chronic illness will recognize that some days you wake up and you just realize that this day is not going to go well. And you know, as soon as you start the day that it is going to be a day where you do nothing. And I think other people, particularly if you are in that horrible perimenopausal stage where you're getting migraines or maybe you're just ill. But being able to, instead of just taking like a failure of the day, to be able to demote all of the things that you're aiming for, I found really, really good. So I don't disable, it's probably 1 or 2 days a month. I will wake up and I know that just nothing is getting done. I might drag myself through like a Zoom meeting or whatever, but take some things to the post office. But it's really not going to be a day with any energy left for dancing in the kitchen. On those days, right at the beginning, I can take all of those goals right the way down to the minimum. And then I will still do that. I will feel that even on today, I have achieved my goals. Now, they're goals that I set, but it's not that I've said I'm not doing anything. I don't know whether that makes sense. It's very much a psychological thing. If I start, as long as I am succeeding at something, I have great motivation to carry on. If I start failing at it, my character is such that it kind of goes, oh, I really didn't want to do that at all. And it stops paying attention. So for me, it is really useful if I can deliberately set things and set them so that they're achievable. So for the last 8 weeks, I have filled my activity goal, my activity rings. They have all closed every day, which is something I'm rather proud of. What difference has it made? Well, there are lots of kind of like markers. I'm much faster at walking. My blood pressure has gone down. My cardio fitness, according to my watch, this has not been tested by proper medical profession. My cardio fitness has gone up. I'm feeling good. But I'm also feeling positive that I am getting a lot of activity, that I am doing things that will help my health. Because I don't know whether this is all people who have autoimmune diseases, or perimenopause, or whatever is going on in your life. I have found it very, very easy over the years to blame that for everything. Now, clearly it is to blame for a lot of things. It's to blame for a lot of my stamina. It's, pain and so on. But it's not actually to blame for everything. So it turned out it wasn't to blame for all of my inactivity. Turns out it wasn't to blame for the way I ate. It wasn't to blame for all of the sleep issues that I had. It's unpicking things and also being prepared to say, yeah, I could actually make changes on the side of this. And this is what I'm doing, and this is why I run these experiments. And I have found it so transformative in my life that is what I now do in my kind of course that's Bloom. Bloom runs only twice a year, and it has a very limited number of people, and it is a supported kind of doing of these experiments, I suppose you would say. So there are 6 months of, advice, maybe at the end of an email, and then there are sort of live Zooms where we journal with every new moon, and we set up our experiments and our intentions, and we work out what it is we're actually wanting and how we're going to do that, and we try it for a month, and then we come back and see how it has gone. So that is Bloom. If you want to be on the list that I'm going to notify when it opens, which I think is going to be the 20th of May, I'll put the link underneath here. So that's kind of my activity thing. The other thing, obviously, was the reduction in use of my phone, on social media. And what happened with that is it was so successful and it made such a difference to my life that I just basically decided that I no longer needed social media or any scrolling apps on my phone. So there's a whole video about why I came off Instagram. And I also don't have Pinterest or Vinted or eBay or anything where I can waste time on my phone. And that has made a noticeable difference to my brain in 8 weeks. I would say it made a noticeable difference in 3 weeks. One of the things that I was concerned about was, if you're trying to buy something or you're trying to log into something on a website and it says, oh, we'll send you a 6-digit code to put into these boxes, like a security code, an authorization code. And I'd get those codes and I couldn't remember the 6 numbers. Now, I know when I mentioned this in my thing about wanting to reduce social media, lots of people commented, oh, but that's quite normal. But actually, I thought, I don't think that is normal. I don't think it is normal, being able to remember 6 numbers for 10 seconds. I think I should be able to do that. And that ability came back after 2.5 weeks. That suddenly I'd gone from not being able to remember these numbers, reversing them, that kind of thing, to being able to hold them in my brain to put them into the website things. Sounds trivial? It was a measurable thing for me. I've also found that I'm reading a lot more and I'm actually focusing on that. I'm not doing so many little bits of jobs all over the place. I'm not doing that whole going out into the garden to pick some forget-me-nots, but deciding that I'll dig out that weed and then tie up something else and then leave all of my tools strewn all over the garden and not actually have the forget-me-nots. Now I would actually go and do the task, finish it, start something else. And that, I think, what I'd obviously done was train my brain to sort of like jump and see, like that kind of scroll thing where you get image after image after image. You don't ever actually focus down on it. I think I had trained my brain to only be able to cope with like a strobe effect. So that has made an amazing difference. And I would say, I mean, you know that I'm not a prescriptive person at all, and I think that lots of people are very different. But I would say that if you have been worrying about focus or memory, if you are one of the people who have been thinking, oh, I wonder if I have perimenopausal brain fog, I wonder if I should get tested for ADD, I wonder if, I'm just getting old and forgetting things all the time, I would just see whether not scrolling for 3 weeks makes a difference. Now, I'm not necessarily saying come off all of these things. I put them on a laptop. It's not the same kind of scroll, or a computer, not a tablet. A tablet is the same kind of scroll, but put on desktop. Look at Instagram on a desktop if you want to look at Instagram. But see about halting that scroll thing, because I kind of feel that it's going to end up, we're going to look back and it's going to be like, smoking or not having seatbelts or whatever, that it's something that's so self-evident that this is bad for our brains. So anyway, I'm not being prescriptive, but if you have been thinking, oh, my focus is not brilliant, just give yourself 3 weeks no scrolling and see if it makes a difference. It might not. No. So both of these experiments are actually going to carry on. And one, the getting rid of all social media is allowing me to have more time to do everything else in my life. it is quite scandalous how much more time I have in every single day. And having more focus is allowing me to use that time much better. The one downside of the social media thing, and this is why I haven't actually completely deleted all of my accounts, is that I'm aware that, you know what, you've got friends and you've got maybe 2 or 3 friends who you are in touch with a lot through lots of different ways. You know, the kind of texting a photo or Instagram messaging or Facebook messaging or emails or whatever. And it's sort of like they're a mix of things. People who you speak to all the time, you might see in real life even. Those friendships, absolutely fine. I just messaged and went no longer on Instagram. Just moved over to texts or whatever. And then there's a whole load of people who are kind of like business clients. You know, maybe they are members of the studio club, or they're customers, or they are people who have businesses. And that was also fine because people have moved on to contacting me via the forum, and that's really nice because it means that the studio club forum is nice and chatty, or they get my newsletter, they email me, whatever. That is also fine. But there is a layer of people who I'm in contact with who've never bought from me, who are not really part of my community, but are kind of like, they're nice people to have around, you know? They're lovely people, but it's a much more kind of Instagram DM or comment or whatever. And it's that has gone. And I'm still trying to work out how I feel about that, because they're nice people to have around, but equally, I'm only connecting with them really on a very superficial level, because everybody tends to, even posts that look really candid, they're still been through lots and lots of filters in your mind as to what you put up and what you don't. So I know lots of people who would fit into this category with me, who I then maybe have happened to meet, and what they've been posting, quite rightly, has nothing to do with their actual real life, because their real life is personal and private and involves other people and that kind of thing. So what I've been interacting with is a very tailored, filtered, for public consumption kind of thing. So does not having that actually make me lose anything in authentic connection? I suspect not. It might make me lose some pretty pictures. But as I say, it is this group of people, you know, people who I recognize online over several years, who are lovely people, that are not carrying over to something else. And I need to find out how I feel about that before I actually completely delete social media. So that's good. That's been really interesting. What else? What else? Oh, that was the other thing that I was going to mention. One of the things that people say to me most often is that they would love to be more creative, or to spend more time in the garden, or to do lots of kind of be out in nature, whatever, but they never have the time. And my feeling is nobody ever has time to do everything that's on their list. So you need tactics and you need different ways of running your life. And because I have less hours in the day than Beyonce, I have become really good at having just some tactics and sneaky ways of addressing time. So I have decided that I will do a free masterclass next month, so in June, so June 2025, that's going to be called About Time. And I've just started a kind of a list if you want to find out about that. It's going to be completely free. It's going to be live. There will be a replay, all of that kind of thing. But I will put that underneath here because I'm aware that it's, you know, it's 4.5 weeks away. So you can actually get a reminder if you are interested in that. And I think that's me, a very wobbly chat, but I do hope that you see that living your life as a series of deliberate experiments, one, it's fun, but two, they build and they build and they build and they transform things in the right way. So I shall see you next Friday. And until then, bye-bye.